Well, welcome to The View from Abroad. I'm Teresa Norton. And on February 27th, 2025, I started a podcast that has guests choose one of the newspaper columns I wrote 30 years ago when I was living in Hong Kong to see what has changed in the world and in ourselves since then. And here we are, 1 year later. And I decided it would be fun to invite the show's very first guest, photographer John Langford, back for the anniversary show. So John's and my paths crossed in the 1980s when he returned to Hong Kong, where he had spent his teenage years, and he went off to university and he was back for a while. And, a lot has changed in his life since that first podcast was aired. And we're going to hear more about that in a moment. But first, let's listen to the column that John chose. A ticket from the theater of life. I don't know. Maybe I'm nuts, or maybe I just spent too much time lying on my tummy in front of my parents' hi-fi, staring at record album jackets and listening to Barbara Cook and Ethel Merman and my most revered Julie Andrews. But I grew up expecting life to be a musical production. It wasn't until the other evening that life finally imitated art. At the tender age of 8, I'd listened to enough show tunes to know the rituals of courtship. There was the people will say we're in love denial stage. There was the I could have danced all night realization phase, the tonight first kiss, and finally the if ever I would leave you reconciliation, happily ever after finale. Oh, I could hardly wait. At 14, my first beau was a very sweet boy named John. He was a baseball player, a pitcher, and he was 2 years older than I was. He would come to my parents' house and sit on the couch, and he would listen to My Fair Lady with me. It was our show. This was true romance. And then he tried to kiss me at a party, and I was a bit too much of a lady and unfairly gave him a slap in the face. He had been sitting on my mom's couch for months waiting for that kiss. Goodbye, John. Yeah, he found himself a leather-jacketed, black eye-lined honey and began pitch and woo to her. I was crushed, but there was nothing I could do to recapture that moment. The music had faded. The song was over. Hang on. The ingenue never loses the guide through virtuous behavior. I reread all those album covers. Eliza ended up with Professor Higgins. Marion the librarian with Harold Hill. Guinevere ended up in a nunnery, but it wasn't because Arthur and Lancelot decided to opt for some loose-lipped, swivel-hipped damsel. He'd be back. He'd look into her makeup-caked eyes and hear strains of I've grown accustomed to her face, and realize that true love cannot be found in the arms of a girl in a halter top. I waited by the phone while his slutty new girlfriend wasted no time in decorating his neck with love bites. How does Julie Andrews compete with that? I went out and bought a pair of false eyelashes and a halter top and found myself my own little leather jacket-clad honey. He liked listening to Cheech and Chong on the 8-track tape player in his parents' car, so there was an intermission in the musical production of my life. Now, my husband and I began dating at 19, and he knew all the words to Trouble from The Music Man, and he came to see me in all my performances of A Little Night Music and Fiddler on the Roof and a very low-budget production of Candide. Well, while he didn't share it, he understood my dream that there might actually be some circumstance under which people crushing along on their way to work would burst into song, men dropping their briefcases to swing women in pencil skirts high above their heads, bus drivers and high-steppin' traffic cops bellowing out the chorus. I grew up and out of the notion that this sort of collective joy could spontaneously combust, but I think that the hope of it lingered somewhere in me. And the other night, a big fat orange moon hung in the sky, and I commented on its beauty to the taxi driver who took me from North Point to Happy Valley. His English was as poor as my Cantonese, but he wrote the Chinese characters for moon on the back of a Mark VI card, and he handed it back to me. We sat in contented silence, and then quietly he began whistling the song The Red River Valley and then humming it. And I joined in with the lyrics and we sang together all the way home. When the cab stopped, we finished the chorus before I got out and watched him pull away. From this valley, they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. My musical moment had happened, spotlit by a full moon. I put that Mark 6 ticket up on my bulletin board, a long-awaited ticket stub from the theater of life. John Langford. The last time we spoke, you were dialing in from Austin, Texas, and planning a move to Asia. And now you're back and you're living in the Philippines.
That's right. And first and foremost, let me just say kudos to you for having this dream of a podcast become a reality. So,
Right.
congratulations to you, and thank you so much for. I'm sorry you ran out of interesting people to talk to, and you had to invite me back for a second episode.
Not at all. In fact, I chose you the first time not because you and I knew each other very well. We had mutual friends, but I think we'd only probably been out a few times with that gang. But I somehow saw your Facebook post and I just thought to myself, my God, this guy's he's pretty funny. And yeah, I like the way he writes. Maybe he would be a fun guest. And here you are back again. Anyway, let's unpack that column to see what's changed and what's not. And then I want to hear, we have the break. We'll hear a little bit about, some of the exciting stuff you're doing, a little bit more about life in the Philippines. But okay, so what's the same, what's not? One thing that I noticed was musicals. Me listening to those old vinyl musicals in my parents' living room. And I think musicals are probably bigger than ever with young kids now because of movies like Wicked and Frozen and stuff like that.
Right, right. Yeah, I think, you and I are of a generation where, of course, we didn't have all of the offerings that there are now online.
Mm.
We won't even get into all of the technology that's changed, but we had a lot more time to sit and, uh, read the liner notes and, listen to our parents' hi-fi systems and,
High
my
fidelity.
yeah, yeah, my dad had one of the, reel-to-reel tape decks, and
Ooh.
yeah, that's a bygone era, and I'm glad we got to experience that.
I think so too. And the thing with listening to it, you got a couple of little pictures, but the rest of it all took place in your imagination.
Yes,
Because
yes,
you didn't see the Broadway show, you only got the cast recording, and so everything else happened between your ears, and that was pretty special. I'm with you on that.
yeah.
Um, let's see, another thing well, I have to say, I'm not sure I actually slapped that baseball pitcher for attempting to, he didn't steal you can't steal first base, can you? He was trying to I think that was a little, dramatic, poetic license, but I certainly did not let him kiss me.
Uh-huh.
And, I'm gonna make a little confession here. That was a regret. I was doing a workshop, in Canada as an adult years later, and I had everybody pair up and share with their partner a regret. And do you know that was my regret?
Really?
That was my regret, not like the big regret of my life, but it was a regret that came up for me. And the regret, I think the regret was not, "Oh, what would have happened if Johns and I had ended up together?" And it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was that I wished I had not been that repressed little pent up when I look at that what's changed in the world. Spontaneous musical moments, when life would become a musical. Flash mobs.
Yes, yes. So cool.
That was like a dream come true for me.
Yeah.
And then it was like wedding proposals. And I thought, you know, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's turned into quite a production, hasn't it? I mean, I saw a video the other day on YouTube where, the groom, instead of just waiting at the front of the church for the bride to to do her processional. He and his groomsmen had staged this big choreographed number, and I don't know. To me, it's all about the bride. Should be all about the bride.
Well, but you've never married, have you?
No, I have not.
You have never married, and it's all about the bride. Did you ever have somebody that you don't have to mention any names. Did you ever have anybody that did you make a proposal ever?
No, the closest I came was looking at wedding rings online with her. I won't say her name. She's as far as I know, she's happily married now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about as close as I ever got. You were talking about, being repressed as this teenage girl, and it did remind me, connected with this notion of listening to music, in my parents' home on Essex Crescent in Kowloon Tong in Hong
Hmm.
Kong. Uh, it was one of the few air conditioned rooms in the house, and whenever one of us kids would have, a special friend over, as my mom would call them, we would sit in the living room because we weren't allowed to have, guests of the opposite sex in our bedroom. No way, no way.
Absolutely.
I mean,
No way.
my Southern Baptist missionary mother was not about to let that happen. And so, periodically she would come into the room bearing a tray of refreshments or, some other excuse to make sure that, listening to music was all that was going on in the living room.
That you weren't trying to steal second base.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember one girlfriend, I'm still in touch with her, Lisa, whose name will not reveal her last
Full
name, but
name, yes.
yeah. Let's say Lisa used to wear very form-fitting T-shirts with very irreverent slogans on the front. I remember one that said, "If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit." And I, I would always have to, say, Lisa, before you come over, just please check your wardrobe and try not to have anything too racy on your t-shirt. But anyway, back to you in the column.
No, my parents were lovely people, but, yeah, all those same rules, same rules. The magical interaction with my Hong Kong taxi driver. I kept that Mark 6 card. I still have it.
That was such a special story. And of course I read the column when you sent it to me, but then hearing it read aloud in your own voice, it was so poignant, and it really took it to another level. Thank you for sharing that story.
Hey, why don't we take a break now? And I want to hear a little bit more about life in the Philippines. Obviously, that's going to have to wait for the second half. But in that break, let's talk a little bit about your photography and some of the things that might be available for people to check out. John, you have a book that was compiled. I guess the photos came as a result of a trip that you took around around the world for not in 80 days. How many days were you traveling?
3 years. So the title of the book is 1,000 Days, which is approximately the length of time that I was traveling. So yes, that book of that photo collection is my 50 favorite photos from my trip, including one incidentally from Portugal, where you now live.
Ooh, how nice. Well, where did you tell us where you traveled in 3 years?
I went to every continent except for Antarctica. 38 different countries and 6 different continents. And I tried to stay about a month in each country that I visited because, you're a traveler. And as you well know, you can't really get a taste or a feel for the culture of a place unless you've been there for a while. So
Hmm.
a month was about the shortest length of time I stayed anywhere that I visited.
What was a favorite destination if you look back on that? I'm sure there's not just one, but what was one of the favorite?
Well, in terms of natural beauty, I would have to say the South Island of New Zealand. It's just unparalleled.
Mm.
Uh, so beautiful, and mountains, fjords, beaches, fields, pastures. I mean, all these little microclimates and every type of topography and landscape, just remarkably beautiful. In terms of the place, I think that I really, when I think about it, I have such a heart connection with is Cambodia. I spent 3 months there teaching photography in an after school program for at-risk kids. And so that was a very special experience. And then that led to a photo documentary project in the minefields in Cambodia. I'm thankful to say that I've completed that project with both of my legs still attached to my body, but I was
Wow.
literally tiptoeing through the minefields.
Oh my gosh, I never knew this. None of this came up in our first conversation. What year was this? What were the 3 years? When did this
I
take place?
I left Austin in 2010 and returned in 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so this book has got photos from all of these, sort of the best of the best photos, and how people can get 1,000 days.
Okay. The link is www.tinyurl.com/OTDJL 1000 days John Langford OTDJL.
I I may have to just go over there and get a copy of that myself because
Oh, you would.
I will. I absolutely will, and encourage people to look at that. And also, if you go to that website with a slightly different ending, you can get, well, you have to say the name of the book that goes with the pictures.
I will. And I hasten to add, international shipping is available.
Oh,
So
that's good
yeah,
to know.
uh, don't don't uh,
Don't
don't
be
not
shy.
buy a copy just because you live in Timbuktu. Yeah, the other book is entitled. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The Rompin' Stompin' Circus of Love Extended World Tour: Tales from 3 Years on the Road.
And that's the narrative of this 3-year extravaganza. Well, I think they are bookends. I mean, you can't have one without the other.
Absolutely,
Okay, you can
absolutely.
send the commission check to me.
Will do.
I'll give you the bank. What story was spawned from your imagination by reading that column?
Well, I have 2 responses. The first one being that, now that I'm here in the Philippines, I moved here, exactly a year ago this week. February the 10th was my 1-year anniversary here in Dumaguete, which is on the southern tip of the island of Negros. And, reading your column about music and the part that it plays in our everyday life, there there is not a more musical people than the Filipinos. You
Mm,
know that from your time in Hong
yes,
Kong, and
yes.
it is just music just permeates uh, every aspect of daily life here. You can't walk through a grocery store without the person who's stocking the shelves, singing along with the music that's playing over the PA system in the
Mm,
store.
I love
Um,
this.
you walk through the park at night along the boulevard, and every couple of 100 yards or so, somebody's got a battery powered karaoke machine set up and they're belting out. It sort of reminds me of the, you remember in your car when you used to have to actually turn a physical knob to tune in the radio stations? It's kind of like that because you'll go out of hearing of one karaoke machine, and by then you're into you can hear the next karaoke machine on the boulevard.
Yes.
Last night, I think I passed 8 karaoke machines and a guy playing guitar
Wow.
and a church choir. Uh,
Oh, gosh.
so it's just it is almost like being in a musical,
Hmm.
because it's just so much a part of daily life here. The Filipinos loves them some Christmas celebration,
Oh, I
and
know. I remember being in the Philippines and having one of the ladies who was in my workshop say, "Oh, yes, at once the Burr months begin,
yeah,
that's when the Christmas decorations go up." And I thought to myself, "What's the first Burr September?"
yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly right. I was in a coffee shop and it was in early September, and I remember thinking, "Wait a second, uh, lovely weather for a sleigh ride together?" Was hearing it over the PA system in the coffee shop, and then later that week, I went to the grocery store. Again, September, early September in the tropics, and, all the employees are wearing, reindeer
Reindeer.
antlers, and it's not. I mean, it's the real deal. Like, it's
Yeah.
the build up to Christmas in
Yeah.
September. I do wanna, add in one more quick story related to music to bring things full circle. I'm coming up on a birthday, and so I'm toying with the idea of buying a guitar for my birthday because I sold 2 guitars when I left the States to move to the Philippines. Now, back in late, 2000, I was getting together about once a week with a buddy of mine to play guitars, and then he was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and as he went into his final months and weeks, uh, his health was declining rapidly, and so our number of times that we were able to get together and play, was those were becoming fewer and farther between. And so one night I got a call from his wife saying, "If you want to say goodbye, tonight's the night." So I dashed over there and she said to me, "Would you go upstairs and get Marty's guitar and play something for him?" He was at home. And so I went into the bedroom where he was, expecting that it was just going to be he and I and his wife. But in fact, it was the 2 daughters, the son-in-law, the hospice nurse, and I just had to keep reminding myself, this is not a concert, this is a farewell. And, it's hard enough for me to just carry a tune in a bucket, much less accompany myself on the guitar and sing while one of my friends is literally on their deathbed.
Hmm.
But the song I chose was, uh, "Take Me Home, Country Roads" by, John Denver,
Oh,
which is
John
which
Denver.
was one of Marty's favorite songs and one that we played together a lot. Well, he did die that night, and flash forward about a year, his wife had sold the home where they had lived for many years, and she had bought a new home, and I was over at her place hooking up the washer and dryer, and she came in with that guitar and said, "I want you to have this." This was, Marty's guitar, and if you know anything about guitars, you know that every guitar player, longs to have a guitar, a Martin guitar. That's like
Mm.
the top of the line, that's the Rolls Royce of guitars, and his was a Martin guitar, and his name was Martin.
Oh.
So that was one of the ones that I sold when I left Austin to move to here to the Philippines. So I won't ever be able to replace that guitar, but
Hmm.
I'll be 67 in about a month. So I think I might plunk down a few pesos and buy a guitar.
Yeah. Just, I talked about regrets. Do you regret having sold that guitar? Do you wish you had taken it with you or
Um, no and no. I couldn't have taken it with me. I mean, uh, before I moved to the Philippines, I spent some time in Indonesia. And so, it was a circuitous route that brought me here. And, lugging a guitar,
It's big.
a few blocks is a pain, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted to travel with one internationally.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it went to a friend of mine, a buddy of mine bought it, so, if I ever
Great.
need to call him and check up on it, he can give me the status report of my Martin guitar, his Martin guitar. Yeah, no regrets at all.
Here we are at the end of this conversation, and what have we concluded about what is and is no longer relevant? Um, Conversations with taxi I gotta say, I'm gonna put my hand up. I always had, a real, warm spot in my heart for the Hong Kong taxi drivers, you know? I learned most of the Cantonese that I did manage to pick up when I was there from the taxi drivers. I always talked to them. I one of the things I loved was I could get like a grassroots perspective on what was going on in Hong Kong by talking to my taxi drivers. I'm big on chatting to um, people in sort of service roles when I move somewhere new because that's a great way to get to know the place.
That's right. I do the same, Teresa, and I'm such a creature of habit that I tend to when I find a restaurant or a shop that I like, I tend to go back there again and again. And part of that here is a social outlet because I live alone. I spend a lot of time alone. I do have a lot of friends from the pickleball community that I've made over the last year. But all of that to say that you're absolutely right. And I find folks who work in food service and coffee shops and so forth. And my favorite folks to pick up little snippets of the language from are the guys who park the scooters at the big department stores here in town. So there are hundreds and hundreds of scooters, and these guys are the hardest working men in show business. I mean, they're shuffling scooters in and out, and you tip them 10 pesos,
Mm.
and they are working out in the hot sun or in the pouring rain, and so those are the guys that I practice my few words of Bisaya with, and they correct me or they teach me another phrase that I can add to my tiny vocabulary. So yeah, absolutely, those are definitely the folks you want to learn from.
Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming back and sharing that. I'm going to try and get through this www.tinyurl. So it's tinyurl.com/OTDJL for your copy of 1000 Days. And you can also probably check out on somewhere on that site, the Rompin' Stompin' Circus of Love Extended World Tour Tales from 3 Years on the Road. Hey, wherever you are on your rompin' stompin' journey through life, breathe all the time. Come up slowly. And remember, when fear about what's around the next bend comes up, hey, what if it's good?